What happens when one of the world's most important oil routes becomes a battlefield? Ceasefire talks stall, and missiles are still flying near Israel and Lebanon. That is the question driving this story, and the answer could shape global energy, U.S. foreign policy, and a security map of the Middle East. In today's video, we are breaking down a fast-moving and highly dangerous geopolitical crisis involving the United States, Iran, Israel, Lebanon, and the Strait of Hormuz. What began as a diplomatic push for a ceasefire has now turned into a tense standoff with military pressure, regional retaliation, and warnings that the situation could spiral far beyond the Middle East. The reason this matters is simple. The Strait of Hormuz is one of the most important choke points in the world for global oil shipments, and any disruption there sends shockwaves through energy markets, shipping routes, and international security planning. At the same time, the Israel-Hezbollah front remains volatile, with rocket fire, retaliatory strikes, and ceasefire violations threatening to undo any progress made in negotiations. So in this video, we're going to unpack what is happening, why it matters, and what could come next. What started this crisis? The latest phase of the crisis began with ceasefire talks involving the United States and Iran, but those discussions ended without a full agreement. According to reporting from AP, U.S. officials said negotiations failed because Iran would not agree to Washington's red lines, which included halting uranium enrichment, giving up key nuclear facilities, and reopening the Strait of Hormuz under conditions acceptable to the U.S. That failure immediately raised the stakes. President Donald Trump then announced a blockade of ships entering or leaving the Strait of Hormuz, a move that dramatically increased pressure on Tehran. NBC reporting also shows that this blockade and the wider ceasefire arrangement remain unsettled, with diplomatic channels still open but no final peace deal reached. In other words, the conflict has not ended. It has simply moved into a more dangerous and uncertain phase. Iran, meanwhile, sees the blockade as an aggressive act rather than a peace measure. From Tehran's perspective, Washington is trying to force concessions while keeping military pressure on Iranian ports and shipping activity. That means both sides are accusing each other of violating the spirit of the ceasefire, which makes the entire process fragile and unstable. Why the Strait matters? To understand why the world is watching this so closely, you have to understand the Strait of Hormuz. This narrow waterway connects the Persian Gulf to the open ocean, and it is one of the most strategically important shipping routes on the planet. A huge share of global oil exports passes through it, which means any military threat, blockade, or disruption can quickly affect fuel prices, shipping insurance, and international markets. That is why the Strait of Hormuz is not just a regional issue. It is a global one. If shipping is slowed, blocked, or threatened, the consequences can spread far beyond Iran and the Gulf. Europe, Asia, and even the United States can feel the effects through higher energy costs and broader economic instability. That is also why every statement from Washington and Tehran is being analyzed so closely by traders, diplomats, and defense officials around the world. And this is where the story becomes even more dangerous. Iran has repeatedly signaled that it views the waterway as leverage, while the U.S. views the strait as a line that cannot be allowed to close. Israel, Lebanon, and the fragile ceasefire. While the Iran-U.S. negotiations are unfolding, the Israel-Hezbollah front is also heating up. NBC reported that Hezbollah fired rockets in northern Israel just before a ceasefire extension was announced, exposing just how unstable the situation remains. Israel intercepted the projectiles and then responded with strikes on launch sites and other infrastructure in southern Lebanon. This is important because it shows how quickly local clashes can undermine larger diplomatic efforts. The New York Times also reported that Israel agreed to talks with Lebanon while continuing strikes against Hezbollah, even as the ceasefire framework remained contested. That means there is diplomacy happening in parallel with combat, which is often a sign that the situation is being managed, but not resolved. Lebanon is caught in the middle of this pressure. The ceasefire may reduce some immediate risk, but according to the reporting, the truce remains fragile because the main actors disagree on what the agreement actually covers. Iran says Lebanon is included, while the United States and Israel have pushed back on that interpretation. When the parties cannot even agree on the terms, the possibility of new violence stays high. The political game behind the headlines. What makes this crisis especially complex is that it is not just about missiles or ships. It is about leverage for the United States. The pressure campaign is meant to force Iran into a deal that limits nuclear risk and regional influence. For Iran, the strategy appears to be about survival, deterrence, and refusing what it sees as one-sided demands. Both sides are trying to shape the negotiation from a position of strength. That explains why military actions and diplomatic statements are happening at the same time. The blockade increases pressure. The ceasefire language opens the door to talks. The rocket fire in northern Israel reminds everyone that the region can still erupt without warning. This is also why regional mediators matter so much. Reports indicate that Pakistan has played a mediating role in the talks, while other regional actors continue to watch closely. In modern geopolitics, the countries that can speak to both sides often become the most important players in the room. What happens next? So what should viewers watch over the next few days? First, any new statement from Washington or Tehran about the blockade will be crucial. If the U.S. keeps the pressure on Iranian shipping, then negotiations may either accelerate or collapse entirely. Second, watch the Strait of Hormuz. Any sign of renewed disruption there could trigger an immediate market reaction and possibly a wider military response. That is the kind of event that can move oil prices overnight. Third, keep an eye on the Israel-Lebanon border. Rocket launches, airstrikes, or retaliatory attacks could derail ceasefire talks and widen the conflict again. Even a short exchange of fire can change the political mood in a matter of hours. Fourth, watch for signs of back-channel diplomacy. In crises like this, the public statements are often loud, but the real decisions are made in quiet rooms through intermediaries. If there is progress, it may first appear as a small shift in tone rather than a major announcement. What we're seeing right now is not just a local conflict. It is a test of how much pressure the Middle East can absorb before a larger confrontation breaks out. With the Strait of Hormuz under threat, ceasefire talks still unresolved, and the Israel-Hezbollah front still active, the region is balanced on a knife's edge. The big question is whether diplomacy can outrun escalation. For now, the answer is unclear. But one thing is certain. The next move by Washington, Tehran, Jerusalem, or Beirut could reshape the entire region.